There is a principle called detachment. I like to call it healthy detachment, but it's actually a principle that's spoken about. I mean, going all the way back to the Buddha in his own way spoke about this, certainly, but it is also a principle that shows up again and again when we look at many spiritual teachers, philosophical teachers, and even psychological principles as well. And it serves as a tool to help us to navigate moments, experiences that can feel very intense or emotional, when it can feel like so much comes to the surface. And it is through healthy detachment that we don't lose ourselves within it by over-identifying with a response or reaction that we might have. On Tuesday, September 16, Mars will stand across the sky from Chiron. And this is an opposition that takes place about once every 2 years. And when it takes place, well, we just might find ourselves in a moment, in a situation where we are feeling all the feels. But here's the thing. There's some people who will bring forward our sense of vulnerability or our sense of being exposed in some way. Well, some people will do that in a way that's challenging, but we still feel safe. And other people, well, that might be less so. But regardless, and as much as we might take ownership for our own reactions, which is a healthy way to go about it, we can't deny that we feel what we do. And in those moments, we are provided with a real opportunity, a mirror of sorts, in which to know ourselves differently, more deeply, and to realize where it is that either we are playing Mars, which is the aggressor, right, which is the instigator, or where it is that we're trying to be Chiron and where that's working and where that isn't. A big lesson as part of this time for a lot of us out there is likely to be, you can't heal anyone else. We can barely heal ourselves. But there are going to be moments when we have to be honest about whether or not that's what we're trying to do. And whether or not it is that we are trying to manipulate a situation so that we will have the outcomes that we want. But ultimately, those outcomes mean walking a path that, well, we just might lose something really important. And part of what might be lost is faith. Faith in ourselves, faith in our future, faith in our journey. Faith in the moments of our lives that ultimately invite us to know ourselves more deeply and to understand that, yes, we are tremendously powerful, but part of our power is going to be sensitivity. And opening ourselves up to that makes us that much more whole human beings. Our emotions don't need to define us, but they can be a pathway towards strengthening us, mind and soul. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of September 14, 2025. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. Live consultations are now available with me and Andy of Wise Ass Astrology over on my website, nadiyashah.com/consultations. Learn more, book yours now, link below. I would like to tell you a fascinating and illustrative story. And it's about my life, and it's about something that happened about 20 years ago. But it actually served as this incredibly powerful anchor for me. And it is a spiritual experience that I go back to again and again as I navigate through life over the course of the decades since. Okay, so we're going back. There was a dude. I dated dude for a little while, and then things were not working out with dude. Dude was acting in a way that felt chaotic, I think is the right way to put it. And I remember I just felt like, oh, but we could be so good together. And I wanted that sense of connection. And I wanted the calm that I felt, if only at the very beginning with this person. And I remember going into one of these, we can call it a magic store, okay? So it is a place where you can pick up all the tools and correspondences that you might need in order to set about with a ritual, in order to manifest a particular intent that you might have. And I remember going in there and I was talking to the lovely person who worked there. I'd been there a few times already. And I remember her saying to me, and I was telling her, oh, this guy, and she was saying, use your anger, use your emotion, channel that emotion into the ritual. I was like, okay. Felt a little weird because I was actually going for love, not anger, but I was frustrated. So I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's take her advice. She owns this place. She obviously knows what she's doing. Let me do this. So I buy candles and I buy herbs and I buy oils and all that good stuff. And I go back to where I was staying and I start doing this ritual, right? I start practicing what it is that I learned from her, but also some of the things I already knew to bridge them together, to utilize this. And I had this beautiful, incredible candle in a tall glass, and it had a prayer on it and everything. So this was a very special thing that I was doing. And I was doing this maybe twice a day, 3 times a day. And I was starting to feel, well, not well very quickly. Very quickly, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like there was this energy that felt like a block. It almost felt like there was gas or something in the air. And the more I practiced this ritual, the worse it got. And I felt like it was really affecting my health in a way that after about a week started feeling a little concerning. And I hadn't connected it immediately to whatever I was doing in this ritual. And I remember a moment. And it was a moment when I went to light this candle and I put a little drop of the oil, the sacred oils and all of that. And I put a little bit on me. And I lit this candle and I realized, oh my God, it's this candle. This candle is making me sick. This candle is a very cheap candle. This is not a candle that should be burned indoors at all. And I put out that candle. And in that moment, I realized 2 very important life lessons. And as I said, I go back to them again and again. They serve as a very important anchor point for me going forward in the decades since. So the first very important lesson is any dude that makes me feel like I got to do a ritual to get him to be a certain way is not the dude for me. Okay, that is not somebody that I need to have anything to do with, and it really is okay. But the other incredibly valuable, incredibly sacred lesson that I came to understand through my own unconsciousness, my own befuddlement on the other side of this process that I'd been through, well, I really understood what it is when they say, you get what it is that you give. And what it is that you give out, it has a way of coming back to you. That's not to say that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. Far from it. That's not what I'm saying at all. And that's also not to say that we have power or control over every external circumstance in our life. There are certainly times when it feels like we're at the forefront of being able to manifest wonderful things, but there are other times, as we see in the planets, that are more about embracing the sacred lesson of powerlessness, of mystery, of not knowing in a given moment, but still having faith enough to keep moving forward, to know that in the fullness of time, whatever we might be going through in a moment will count for something in the fullness of time. When I look at Mars opposite Chiron, I think that these contrasts here that I've demonstrated in our own ways out there, I think a lot of us are going to be having these realizations. It isn't that we take on other people's opinion of us as our own. It isn't that we choose to manipulate a given situation, but rather by sitting in feelings of intensity, sitting in feelings of anger, of what it is that I wanted that other person to feel, I was actually magnifying a particularly toxic version of all of that within me. And that just wasn't working for me anymore. And life was being super clear that that's not working for me anymore. And so it is with Mars opposite Chiron. Chiron is the healer, but Chiron is also the wounded healer. And the wounded healer means that we take whatever our wounds are and we transform them into wisdom. And that wisdom might come to help someone else. But keep in mind this as well. When we look at it mythologically, right? How did Chiron get wounded? Well, in some regions of ancient Greece, they said it was Hercules, but many said that it was Mars, actually, who, having fun, being young, being impulsive, was just shooting arrows all over the place. And one of his arrows went right into the thigh of Chiron. And that wound would not heal. And Chiron was in a place of great pain for an extended period of time before the gods took mercy on him and turned him into a constellation, thereby making him immortal, thereby making him able to transform those very pains into the thing that allowed him to shine that much more brightly and brilliantly and notably in the sky. And in that way, I like to think of Chiron as connected to an awakening of the things that are aligned with our mortality. There's a meme that goes around that says, in the end, we all become stories. I feel this meme in my heart so strongly and very often. In the end, we all become stories. That is what is immortal about us. It is the story that we become. Now, personally, I want to be a really great story, but what is a great story? It's very subjective anyways, and you will decide what that is for you. Mythologically, Mars was the source of the original wounding, and yet Chiron was still his teacher, was his guide, was his doctor, was his mathematician, and so much more. It was Mars that had to learn by hurting someone that he cared for and that he knew cared for him, what it was to behave in ways that are more responsible, especially with the power that he has. And so Mars can show up in a couple of different ways. One is that face of Mars that is impulsive and adrenaline driven and not necessarily thinking about possibilities or consequences even as well. Who's just so in the moment, so going for it that nothing else matters except the feeling of aliveness and strength within ourselves. And that strength comes out in all kinds of ways, but one way that we sometimes can feel strong is by feeling that we have power over another. All the planets, all the asteroids, and all the sky represent sacred energies, sacred deities, some would say. And these are energies that you are composed of. They are whom it is that you are at your very core, especially on a level of soul. It is the planets and the asteroids and the chart points that we see when we look at a birth chart, for example, that tell us something about the composition of the soul and how it shines forward and what it might want to do in this lifetime. But when we have transits like we have now, these lessons still do present themselves to us. These energies still are sacred and we remain connected to them. Sometimes as a collective, but sometimes individually, we feel these energies. And this is likely to be a moment that feels notable to some of us out there. On the one hand, we might feel hurt. We might feel sadness. We might feel pain. I want to be very straightforward with you. And it may or may not have anything to do with us personally. But just because we might feel that doesn't mean we should avoid any situation. It is Mars that in some ways also represents a feeling of our right to exist, our right to be, our right to take up space enough and to exercise a sense of some will over our lives present and to move towards a future through our own effort that we might desire to participate in the co-creation of. Now, when we get Chiron and Mars opposite each other, it's a moment of vulnerability, a moment that might be very uncomfortable for some of us. Again, being very straightforward with you here. But it is a moment that is so incredibly valuable because it is a moment that reveals to us where our sensitivities are, where our wounding is, but I would say even more importantly, the power of our sensitivity. Sensitivity is a gift. It is a gift. I know we can curse it sometimes. I know that I can because I can be so sensitive, but it is a gift because it allows us to be that much more compassionate. It allows us to connect with others in a real human way. It allows us to understand that whatever those core energies might be, of the sky, of the planets, of the asteroids, of the chart points, of the divine deities that they represent, well, as much as we are an expression of them, so is everyone else. So is everything else as well. And in that way, we can't necessarily say that someone is entirely wrong or entirely bad, or someone else is entirely good or entirely right. I think I've mentioned it for the last 2 weeks. I'm going to mention it now again. A couple of weeks back, I had an incredible conversation with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Patricia Bell. She is the author of Timeless Love. And this is a book about grief, is what she specializes in. And we were talking about sort of the pains in the world, right? And how people do what they do, how they can go about it, and especially looking at things like anger, which is part of what Mars represents, is anger. And she said something that I found so striking and so poignant. She said, underneath anger is grief. Now, I would say that one way we might say that more simply is hurt people hurt people. Sure, that's a simple way to put it. But I would also say that hurt can be a part of the human experience itself. But sometimes that hurt can really run to the core of us in a way that we just can't look at. We're just not ready to. Because if we are to acknowledge the grief, the hurt, the pain, and the cause of the true hurt, the true pain that took place, to actually be honest with ourselves about that, well, the outcome would be that we'd have to make certain changes that maybe we're not ready for. We'd have to take certain ownerships that maybe we aren't capable of just yet. Or we'd have to acknowledge that this anger that's being directed over here has nothing to do with anything that's happening over here, but it has to do with what's happening here at the core of us. And whether it is that we are having an experience with someone who is showing us their wounds, they're showing us their anger, but we know there's something else going on, and we know that because we're willing to see it. Or whether it is that we feel the actions of another are triggering some of our own very deep wounding. Our own grief might be triggered at this time. That doesn't mean we should avoid engagement. Because it is an energy like this, rare, once every 2 years, that although might not be easy, and for some it'll be very difficult, it is filled with promise of taking a big leap forward, of finally being able to acknowledge the root of some grief that has been hidden underneath anger, and maybe a whole lot of anger at that. A lot of people walk around and they're just angry at the world, and you can see it in them sometimes. And you can also see that they don't really know why they're angry. They're not ready to. And you can hear it when they're complaining about certain things or others that ultimately, if they were happy, they wouldn't even notice. It wouldn't even matter to them. And so what do we do in that situation? Well, you could do a ritual to make this person suffer even more and to punish them because they did something and it provoked your anger and it provoked your own sense of rightness. Or we could be willing to see the hurt, the grief underneath, and decide to give that love as a way of ultimately giving ourselves love as well for whatever that trigger was. And I know that some people really, you might feel they don't deserve your forgiveness, and maybe they don't. Really, some people, it is not for you to forgive them, right? But it is for you to be at peace with yourself. It is for you to take ownership of your own reactions. It is for you to decide what kind of person you want to be. And it is for you to trust that whatever you feel, however complex, however uncomfortable, however it might be in front of certain people where you really didn't want it to be in front of them, however it might play out, ultimately, you are going to send those parts of you, and your ritual is going to involve not connecting with the anger, which might have a very good reason, but rather connecting with the love. Anger can be so strong, but it can also be very addictive. It provides us this jolt of adrenaline. It makes us feel powerful in a given moment, but there's no peace in it. We cannot be at peace if we live in our anger. And that doesn't mean there aren't things that should make us angry, but we are more powerful when we acknowledge the grief underneath the anger. And that takes a willingness to love, even just a little bit. And that restores us ultimately to, I believe, the truest essence of whom it is we are. We have to face this if we are going to become something more. And ultimately, all of the movements in all of the sky and its connection within all of us really is about creating this awareness. And becoming something more means that we move towards a greater embodiment of the divinity within ourselves. And we can only do that when it is that we truly and honestly and earnestly connect with love, even when it's hard, and especially when it's hard. And I want to be honest, it's going to be hard for some of us more than others, like I said. And it isn't just because of Mars opposite Chiron, but it is also the fact that simultaneously, perfecting on Wednesday though, we are going to have Mercury opposite Saturn. This happens about once a year. And when it happens, this can be tough because we feel restricted. We feel like someone else is acting like they're the boss of us, that they have power over us where they really don't. And it may show up in terms of how people speak to us. And it is in how people are speaking to us that those deeper wounds might get triggered at this time. With Saturn, there is a sense of some need to hold back. And it's not bad to think before we speak, right? That actually is a great asset as we navigate through this lifetime. But here's the thing. If we are willing to engage these energies consciously, Mars opposite Chiron, but especially Mercury opposite Saturn. Now, Mercury has to do with what we're thinking about and the thoughts that we are holding, which are such a powerful pathway towards what's happening on a level of soul and spirit. They are constantly speaking to each other, informing each other within ourselves. If we are willing to move past the discomfort, we will be rewarded. That's how quickly the universe sometimes responds. And the reward comes as we start to move past the middle of the week, because it will be on Thursday that Mercury will change signs, moving into the sign of Libra, and will immediately set up a grand trine configuration with Uranus and with Pluto, two hugely significant planets. Uranus and Pluto are outer planets. And so what's happening with them speaks that much more to what's happening with the collective. But Mercury is decidedly personal. It's about our actual lived experience. And when we get these big planets speaking with Mercury, simultaneously, no less, it is a grand trine in air. It is about what we're talking about, what we're learning, the clarity we are finding on a level of mind, and that sense that we finally get it. And it makes us feel like we're able to focus in on what really matters. We're able to acknowledge where we've given way too much energy to what doesn't. And it helps us to think about what kind of people we actually want to be and what might need to change and how quickly it can change to our advantage. Ultimately, this is work we do for ourselves. But as I said, that work although difficult at the start of the week, will very quickly be rewarded with new thoughts, new ideas, but these are air energies, new connections with other people, new social alliances, a sense of really being understood by others, a sense that you're able to speak up for yourself, you're able to know yourself that much more deeply. I will tell you in a few months, I'm going to have a very big milestone birthday. I'm super, super excited about it. Planning something special with the other women in my family. We're going to go somewhere, you know how I am. I love that. If you've watched me for a while, you know I like doing that. And I had this really profound realization just truly a couple of weeks ago. And that is that getting what you want often comes down to asking for what you want. And asking for what you want is a skill. And right now, approaching a huge milestone birthday, right now, I am just learning this in some ways. I am just learning to engage this practice consciously, and there are times when it has felt uncomfortable. But I know that this is the work of the moment. I know that this is work that my soul, at this point in my journey, is ready to do. And so it is with this week. In the beginning of the week, uncomfortable, whatever your sacred learning is, and especially where it involves speaking up. It's going to be hard, it's going to be uncomfortable, and in some cases, it's not a good idea anyways, and that really is okay. And just because you ask doesn't mean that anything or anything else needs to give that thing necessarily to you, but the strength is in the asking. And the strength is in the self-knowledge that comes as you move through a variety of thoughts and emotions along the way. And in a case like this with this week, we are rewarded for the effort. That reward comes in the second part of the week where there is truly mind and magic that feels very strongly connected. There's something called astrology cookbooks, right? I've written astrology cookbooks, and cookbooks are essentially a great learning tool, which is why I like to write them. But they're this idea of, okay, Mercury, Trine, Uranus equals, right? So planet, aspect, planet equals, right? And all the different possibilities that are there. Well, if you were to write this out in a sheet, if you will, Mercury trine Uranus is good news, right? Hearing something, getting an email, getting a text message, running into somebody, and it feels like a delight or it feels like a game changer in a way that brings a lot of excitement. You add Pluto into the mix to form a grand trine energy, and what it is that we come to know, whom it is that we come to connect with, has this profound transformative quality in our lives at this time. We are in a period between eclipses. And what that means is it's not necessarily the best time to be super specific with the universe of what you want. It's not necessarily the time to really dive deep into magical practices, but it is a very powerful time to acknowledge what your intentions might be and then be open to inspiration. To consider your own wants, but ultimately to know that sometimes the universe has something even greater planned for us than anything we could imagine ourselves. And, you know, there are times when we might think of something we really want, and we think, wow, this is a really big ask of the universe, right? I'm asking so much. Oh my goodness, this feels so big. But from the perspective of the universe and all it is that you have been created to do in this lifetime, from a higher and truly loving vision of your life, from that perspective, what you're asking for is really, really small. It is small for you. It might be big for somebody else, but for you, no. There's something else. And it might not be there's something else in terms of leaping forward along your ask. It might be that you're asking to go this way and the universe is like, oh no, I'm taking you over there. And you're like, I don't really want to go there. That doesn't make sense for me. I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to walk that pathway. And yet, if the universe is taking you there, it means that it is a pathway to love. It is a pathway to greater love and greater wisdom. And it is in the surprise moments that find us in the second part of the week that those pathways start to open up very quickly. The energy of synchronicity is going to be very high in the second part of the week. And that means finding ourselves in the right place at the right time, meeting the right person, and it makes all the difference. Now, what is that difference? Well, it could be practical opportunity. It might be personal realization. It might be insight and understanding. Or it might be a moment of discomfort that allows a really profound breakthrough as a result. Whatever that might be for you, trust the mystery now. It is leading you somewhere really good, and a week like this says, in at least one way, in at least one area of life, we are getting some very good news now. I would be remiss if I didn't emphasize the fact that I am saying that there may be a sense of challenge, there may be disappointments as well, for something that we think we are really to go for, that we really want, but it's almost as if it is a necessary condition. So something even better can open up. And I'm saying this not only because we have Mars opposite Chiron on Tuesday, on Wednesday, we have Mercury opposite Saturn, but also on Thursday, we are going to have Mercury opposite Neptune as well. You add all those oppositions up, and it might really feel like we can't get what we want. But sometimes that's not the point, right? It's not the point to get what we want. The point is alignment with a higher, more loving vision. And it is the period between eclipses that make that alignment just a little bit more obvious and just a little bit more clear to us as part of our own unique journeys that ultimately, in our own ways, we share with each other. It is a journey towards greater love and greater wisdom. Always, always, and everything is a journey towards that. But how we engage that journey, how much pain we bring to that journey, how willing we are to work through that pain, how open we are to grace itself. Well, it says a lot about how much we might end up using this life that much more wisely to align with that very vision. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It's a powerful and meaningful astrological moment. Well, look, in addition to all of this, let me just say, it is Mercury moving into Libra that's going to light up this near Star of David kite formation, right? This kite formation is a huge signature of this time. It's been active in one way or another since last month, and it is going to be very powerfully activated under the light of next week's solar eclipse. That is a powerful energy. I spoke about it for each and every sign in the monthly horoscope. You may want to review that again. But I bring it up because once we have that eclipse, that's going to be a big turning point moment. And then this larger kite formation, it's going to start to change feelings. It's going to start to change its signature, meaning that right now it's just Saturn that has moved back into a water sign. And slowly, over the coming weeks, over the coming couple months, it is going to be other big power players like Neptune, like Uranus, that are also going to retrograde back to where they had been for a very long time, Uranus in earth and Neptune in water. And so there are still going to be blessings. We are still going to have this larger, harmonious energy, but it's going to show up in different ways. It's going to show up not necessarily with the quickness and the light and the sense of self-awareness that is promised now, but that really is okay. And I will talk about those energies when we get there. But for now and for this moment, there is tremendous promise on offer. There is certainly a higher and more loving and more wise vision for our life that is attempting to show itself to us now. And our work is to trust it. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. You know, I love reading you guys, and to prove it to you, here are some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. Thank you for interacting with this post. It really does help other people to discover it. And I appreciate that so, so very much. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you and your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com or thefutureismagical.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes for as low as just $3 a month with choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. And consultations are now available with me and Andy of Wise Ass Astrology over on my website, NadiyaShah.com/consultations. Those links are below, and there are a limited number of slots available. I've just opened up a few October slots, and they've already started filling up. Thank you so much for your trust. I'm truly so grateful for that. If you go onto the website and you go on to the consultation page, you will see a section for me and a section for Andy. The process is very similar. You'll click on one of us, depending on the length of the reading you want. You'll go and be navigating to our calendar. You will choose the available slot that you want. Then you are transferred to a form. You fill out that form with all the information you want us to know in advance. You're directed towards payment. Once you make payment, you will automatically be sent a Zoom link for your appointment time. I get the same link as well. It goes right into my calendar, into my phone. The same is true for Andy as well. So it's a straightforward process. I hope that you will consider, and I'm so very grateful for your trust, and the people out there who have trusted me with their charts, and to share that time with you has meant so very much to me. So thank you. Again, you can check out consultations with me or Andy over on my website, NadiyaShah.com/consultations, links below. There are just days left, really a couple of weeks left before we get to a very special event that takes place at the iconic Omega Institute. I'm so very excited about this. I think it's going to be very, very special. And this is an event headed by the one and only Maurice Fernandez, who is recognized as a world leader in evolutionary astrology. And it features a lot of big dog astrologers. I will be one of them, which is like just so meaningful to me. But the overall theme is going to be astrology and consciousness. We're looking at goddess vibrations and energies, especially in astrology. And we're going to be approaching the chart from that perspective. Jupiter in Cancer is going to be a big part of it. And then all of us are going to have our own asteroids that we are going to bring. In my case, a chart point, because I'll be talking about Black Moon Lilith. So as I said, Maurice, big dog astrologer, he is going to be there. Lynn Bell, renowned legendary astrologer Lynn Bell. She has a book on solar returns that is often cited as one of the best books on solar returns that has ever been written. And so you might want to check that out. It is going to be Anne Ortelee as well. I'm sure you found her online somewhere. She is super popular online. She's going to be there. And Hannah Tanajura, you've met her here on my channel. She will also be part of this event. And so you've got a little time left to join us. And I think that on-campus accommodations have sold out, but there are still lots of Airbnbs and other lodgings available nearby. And I hope that you will join us, because I think it's going to be so fun and so rewarding and truly very moving as well. I'm really looking forward to sharing this other side of myself with you guys, and to share this experience with you. I'm going to be right there with you as we go through these lessons, learning from my peers as we co-create this experience together over the course of a very special weekend. If you see the testimonials, people have said that this weekend ends up being tremendously powerful for them. And I know for me, having gone to the Omega Institute 21 years earlier, I kid you not, 21 years ago, I was there as a participant. And that weekend was an anchor for me as part of powerful life changes that took place afterwards. I spoke about it in my interview with Maurice. I'll be sure to link it below. And I'm not the only one who's felt this way over the many years that the Omega Institute has been around. And so now to come and not only to be facilitating presentations as part of this very special weekend, but also to participate in this very special weekend, right? To see what might be inspired within me. Well, I'm just so excited about all of it. I'm there in service to the participants, but also there in openness to wherever it is that the energies might take us, trusting that they are going to be powerful and very, very good. So you can learn a lot more about this very special weekend program taking place at the one and only Omega Institute. Over on their website, you can get a direct link in the description below. I hope you will join us, and just thank you. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you for your really celebration as part of sharing and magnifying an astrology that is about raising consciousness, raising greater love and greater wisdom. Well, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for it. Stay tuned for short horoscopes coming up right now. And of course, as I said, expanded horoscopes up right now over at thefutureismagical.com. Thank you for your trust. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. There is a principle called detachment. I like to call it healthy detachment, but it's actually a principle that's spoken about. I mean, going all the way back to the Buddha in his own way spoke about this, certainly, but it is also a principle that shows up again and again when we look at many spiritual teachers, philosophical teachers, and even psychological principles as well. And it serves as a tool to help us to navigate moments, experiences that can feel very intense or emotional, when it can feel like so much comes to the surface. And it is through healthy detachment that we don't lose ourselves within it by over-identifying with a response or reaction that we might have. On Tuesday, September 16, Mars will stand across the sky from Chiron. And this is an opposition that takes place about once every 2 years. And when it takes place, well, we just might find ourselves in a moment, in a situation where we are feeling all the feels. But here's the thing. There's some people who will bring forward our sense of vulnerability or our sense of being exposed in some way. Well, some people will do that in a way that's challenging, but we still feel safe. And other people, well, that might be less so. But regardless, and as much as we might take ownership for our own reactions, which is a healthy way to go about it, we can't deny that we feel what we do. And in those moments, we are provided with a real opportunity, a mirror of sorts in which to know ourselves differently, more deeply, and to realize where it is that either we are playing Mars, which is the aggressor, right, which is the instigator, or where it is that we're trying to be Chiron and where that's working and where that isn't. A big lesson as part of this time for a lot of us out there is likely to be, you can't heal anyone else. We can barely heal ourselves. But there are going to be moments when we have to be honest about whether or not that's what we're trying to do. And whether or not it is that we are trying to manipulate a situation so that we will have the outcomes that we want. But ultimately, those outcomes mean walking a path that, well, we just might lose something really important. And part of what might be lost is faith. Faith in ourselves, faith in our future, faith in our journey, faith in the moments of our lives that ultimately invite us to know ourselves more deeply. And to understand that, yes, we are tremendously powerful, but part of our power is going to be sensitivity. And opening ourselves up to that makes us that much more whole human beings. Our emotions don't need to define us, but they can be a pathway towards strengthening us, mind and soul. Now, how this tension between Mars and Chiron is likely to speak to you, will depend on your sun, moon, and rising. Take all three into consideration, synthesize the information to make it unique to you. And there are lots more horoscopes available right now on my YouTube channel, Nadiya_Shah, and in the superstar space at thefutureismagical.com. Aries, Mars is your ruling planet and Chiron is in your sign. Mars is in your opposite sign, and all this adds up to an incredibly important aspect that can serve as a turning point for you, especially in the context of partnerships of all kinds and love as well. Love can be the thing that really has you feeling all of the feels, and in some cases in a way that feels just very uncomfortable. But it does point the way towards your own deeper healing that ultimately can help you to move towards relationships that are a lot more meaningful to you, whether that's with the current person or in a current situation, or as part of opening yourself up to someone new. Taurus, Chiron is in the sign just before yours, and this has to do with soul, psyche, and spirit. But what's happening with Mars? Well, that's in a part of the sky that has to do with your daily life, what you're doing day in and day out in a very practical way. And when these two stand across each other this way, it's a time of awareness in a way that feels like you just can't avoid it, even if you've wanted to. Your vulnerabilities can feel like they come right to the surface in a way that maybe they were hidden even from you before as well. That might be uncomfortable. And some of these triggers might show up in the context of what's happening in your daily environments, particularly with clients, customers, coworkers, and also where it comes to people that maybe you've hired, employees or hairdressers or doctors and so on. Regardless though, and whatever awakens for you now, understand that the power is here as well to make profound changes that have you feeling stronger within on those levels of soul, but also in terms of your physical presence and your physical self as well. Now, whatever happens with one of these people, know that this aspect helps you to get honest with yourself about what you feel about these particular people and what you're going to do about it. That might be something you're consciously sharing with them or not as part of your journey towards taking ownership for your own responses. But ultimately, what this energy says is that you're moving towards living in a way that feels a lot more healed and a lot more empowered inside and out. Gemini, Chiron is moving through a part of the sky that has to do with friendships and group alliances. And it is Mars that is in a heart-oriented part of the sky for you, having to do with what you really want, what's going to make you happy, what brings you joy. And where friendships or certain alliances are strong, well, they serve as a springboard towards your deeper healing. They allow that vulnerability to take place. But energy like this says that at a social event, in a group context, this might be energy that says you feel provoked in some way, or you feel exposed in some way as well. Now, whatever that might be for you, know that other friends, other people, perhaps even at the same event, just might help you to understand what you're feeling as part of moving towards a genuine sense of empowerment and also awareness of what it is that you are coming to understand is going to make you happy and embracing it that much more fully. Cancer, Chiron is moving through a part of the sky that has to do with career, success, purpose, and the bosses in your life. Mars is at the foundation of your chart, having to do with your past and your sense of rootedness. And so some of these energies could play out where it comes to people in positions of authority, not necessarily fun or easy. Outside of that, though, these energies can be very powerful in how it is that they help you to understand what you are going for in a larger sense and what it is that really matters. Allowing healing to take place that aligns you with a higher, more loving vision will ultimately restore your sense of your roots, helping you to feel strong, knowing that you have it within you to align with whatever that vision might be from the ground up. Leo, Chiron is in fellow fire sign Aries. This is a worldly part of your sky, helping you to understand what you really believe about the world around you. And it is Mars right now that is moving through a mind part of the sky, helping you to come together with your own ideas and how it is that you might want to express them. And so you can see here, there's a level of spontaneity. There's a level of finding yourself in the right place at the right time and meeting the right person, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy. In fact, I would say this energy can suggest that something you share, perhaps spontaneously in person or online, might feel that it ultimately triggers you based on how someone responds to it. Or it might be someone that you thought was pretty cool and you see something they've posted and it just feels like it rocks your world in a way that might be uncomfortable. But ultimately, this energy helps you to understand what you believe and why, to ensure that your beliefs are guided by a sense of calm and a sense of peace rather than from your own wounding, especially your past wounding. And where you feel triggered, well, the opportunity is here as well to heal that much more deeply, to ensure that you like the direction you're going, especially where it comes to your engagement with the larger world around you. Virgo, Mars is moving through a part of the sky for you that has to do with money you earn, money you spend, self-love, self-esteem, and Chiron is in a part of the sky that has to do with wealth. It has to do with your relationship with financial institutions, but it also has to do with change, truth, transformation, and power, how you understand it. And look, in some ways, right, money is power, they say, and the tension of that power might feel very strong for you in one way or another, whether it's within you or within your interactions with other people now. Outside of that, though, these energies can speak to a sense of awareness around your own resourcefulness, emotional, financial, and otherwise. This can be a time when powerful healing takes place. Now, whether that's healing towards financial matters and your emotions around money, whether that healing is more about being honest with yourself about how far you've come, what's changed, and where now you're ready to move forward, well, your answers are going to be your own, but they are going to help you to get in touch with something that feels like an authentic expression of you and the determination to live it. Libra, Mars is moving through your sign, and it is Chiron that is in your opposite sign. This is going to play out in the context of relationships, partnerships, and love as well. It is you that is holding a sense of verb, the force as it's called, right? There's a part of you that really wants change to occur. But it might be the case where your interactions with another end up being a trigger of sorts, and it might just be people who are especially close to you that you're already partnered with, and you get to examine whether or not it really has anything to do with them. If it does have something to do with them, well, this is one of those moments where you feel that there's a need to evolve the relationship, to bring healing to it, but that is something that the two of you might need to do together, and the willingness has to be there. If it is, then previous challenges can absolutely be overcome. But part of this might also be being honest with yourself about why it is you might be in dynamics that just don't work for you, that are in ways hurtful even as well. Getting honest is the first step towards empowering yourself, whether that takes you more in alignment with them or another direction. Scorpio, Mars, your ancient ruling planet, is moving through the sign just before yours, stirring so much of what's happening on levels of soul, psyche, and spirit for you. And it is Chiron that is moving through a part of the sky that has to do with your daily life, your habits, your rituals, and the people you interact with regularly. If anybody out there is likely to find themselves in alignment with your healing, it certainly is you. But if it is the case that you first need to be aware of where healing has to happen, well, you might find that that is a trigger now. Not necessarily fun, but ultimately very empowering. For some Scorpios, there are going to be dramatic changes that involve an important exit or ending of a bad habit, of a way that you've been living, or of a key person that in some way might represent you not being at your healthiest best. And that comes to represent a sense of empowerment for you moving in a stronger direction. Sagittarius, it is Mars that is moving through a friendship part of your sky, and it is Chiron that continues to move through a heart-oriented part of the sky for you, having to do with what you want in your heart of hearts in every area of life. And this key opposition makes you very aware of where it is perhaps that certain people, well, they just get you riled up. Maybe they push your buttons, but the power is also in those social dynamics and connections that you have with others. Friends might remind you of your power, but the healing work that may be there to do, especially on a level of heart, claiming what it is you want, well, that work is going to be uniquely your own. Capricorn, Mars is moving through the top of your sky, having to do with career and purpose, and it is Chiron that continues to move through the foundation of your chart, having to do with your past, your home, and your living situation. This type of aspect can bring with it, well, behavior from bosses and people in positions of authority that feel triggering. And where it is that it has already been a pattern, and I'm so sorry to say, this could be abusive. This could feel toxic to you in some way as well. Now, the flip side is you, and if you are a boss, well, what kind of boss do you want to be? What kind of healing presence do you want to be or not? That might be an important consideration that plays out for you at this time. For all that, though, this energy does inspire you to think about where it is that you could empower yourself to go in a larger sense and what you might want to heal very deeply within you as part of aligning with sacred ambition ahead. Aquarius, Mars is moving through a worldly part of your sky, having to do with long distance travel, immigration, citizenship, higher learning, and legal matters. It is Chiron that continues to move through a communicative part of your sky, and a part of the sky that has to do with synchronicity and spontaneity as well. Now, that spontaneity may not always feel comfortable with this placement, at least for now, but that doesn't mean that there isn't you stumbling on moments of healing when you least expect it. That is absolutely the case. Where it is that you are connecting to some sense of spiritual truth that's right for you, well, that's where you maximize a sense of strength and purpose. And it is that very belief that helps you to facilitate powerful changes within you now. Pisces, it is Mars that is moving through a profound part of your sky, having to do with change, truth, transformation, and wealth. And it is Chiron in a part of the sky that has to do with money you earn, money you spend, self-love, and self-esteem. So you, like your opposite sign, Virgo, some of these energies of vulnerability, empowerment, uncertainty, but ultimately determination, well, they just might play out in terms of what's happening financially. Although I don't think that'll be the case for most Pisceans out there. For the most part, this is an awakening of what healthy self-love looks like for you, how you're going to channel it to your advantage, and what needs to heal, what has healed, what's ready to heal, so that you can embrace a more loving sense of yourself. For all that, though, powerful changes are in the works. You are being strengthened by what truths you are uncovering about yourself, and the choices you're making now just might change the trajectory of your life for the better. Thank you for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.